In our last class, we referred to Barker's point of view that there are a number of varieties of liberty. We start from that point now. Barker was talking of liberty in two senses. First of all, liberty as a procedure of organization of political life. And secondly, liberty as defined by law of the country. So naturally, after concluding his analysis, Barker comes to the conclusion, I quote him, that if liberty and law do not quarrel, liberty may quarrel with itself. This is his statement. That is, there is a popular notion that if citizens wants to go on in a liberal way to exercising his liberty, it may clash and do clash sometimes with the law of the land. So that we can understand that. But what about this part of the phrase that liberty quarrels with itself? And we must make this point clear in order to have a further dimension of our discussion on liberty. What Barker really means is this, that there are different forms of legal liberty. And for example, he says that within the category of what we call civil liberty, it is called the civil liberty of the individual person. When it is a question of individual person, we call it civil liberty. When it is the question or issue of citizenship or citizen status, then it is political liberty. And when we think of citizens as a worker, then it is the economic liberty, which are important. That means civil liberty is one of the person concerned, of the individual, political liberty of the citizen, and economic liberty of the worker. Same citizen in different capacities. Now, here in explaining civil liberty, we must refer to William Blackstone. Let me have a few words on Blackstone's view and then we come to Barker again. Now, Blackstone, he was the eminent 18th century jurist in England. Now, Blackstone identified three articles in civil liberty. First, personal security, not only of life and health, but also of reputation and intellectual freedom. You just follow the wordings. So this is one kind of civil liberty. Secondly, personal freedom, especially freedom of movement, mobility. And third, personal property, especially liberty of free use, enjoyment, and disposal of all acquisitions. This is the basic liberty. What I earn is mine, and therefore I have full liberty. I must have full liberty, how I will enjoy it, etc. Barker adds a fourth article. He said that, okay, Blackstone said three. I think there should be a fourth article, that is, he says, practical freedom, meaning thereby the freedom for free will and exercise of choice in respect of contractual action and relations with others. Since the very concept of liberty is societal, because there is no question of liberty at the highest peak of the Himalayas, Everest. If somebody goes to Everest and say, I want liberty, it is meaningless. The whole question of liberty adds significance only because we live in society, large number of people. So what ought to be the relations of the self with others? So this is, he says, one is by contract, another by developing relations. So this is Barker's contribution is the fourth article. Now, as a political liberty of the person, Blackstone says that this liberty is largely negative insofar as it means in the main the power of the state or the government to define or restrict the liberty of the others. In so many laws, these things are done. So for example, the traffic rules. So you cannot go this, you cannot go this. Only after the green light is there you can go. That means you cannot imagine an absolute personal freedom or like this. So law is not the enemy of liberty. Law helps enjoyment of liberty.
So it is not a limitation on liberty.
No, not all laws. Suppose if there is detention law, very crude type, then that is inimical to liberty. But the traffic law helps enjoy the liberty. Liberty of the safe driving. If you say that, why should I am a free citizen, why should I obey that constable, traffic constable, then that means you are inviting chaos.
Liberty not to be run down by any car.
Yes. Now, so Blackstone, he was a jurist basically, so he says the highest law is always the constitution. Everybody must function within the constitution, and that ensures liberty for all. Then the other is limitations of the sovereign prerogative, either parliament or the king or the whatever the regime in any case, a president of the country or the prime minister. They may have certain prerogative, but they must not be allowed to go against or adversely affect liberty of the citizen. So then there is the power of petitioning the government for redress, and the power of having or using arms for self-preservation and self-defense. Now this is a very, very, what should I say, very interesting thing to, and there is no end to debate. Just one digression in this connection which comes to my mind immediately. Now, right in India now, many jurists even, or the political leaders, they are suggesting that women must be trained in using arms, because women have become vulnerable to violence. Now, it may have other repercussions. In America, for example, everybody has got the fundamental right to carry arms. From the very beginning, they are insisting on it as part of individual liberty. Now, what is the result? We get the incident, I hope you remember, that is a minor boy, he used the guns and killed his friends in the class. So the balance is necessary. But after all, the Blackstone pointed out to this. So he said that political liberty should be regarded as a counterweight to the individual to pull or thrust the government as an outside agency. If you think that individual and the government, if they do not accommodate each other for the benefit of the total social health, otherwise there will be clash. If the individual says the government is my enemy, if the government says the individual I must repress it and control the individual, then liberty vanishes. So this is one kind of thing to be, dilemma to be resolved in political theory. Now, the third form of civil liberty, that is economic liberty. It is rather easy to understand that in a modern democratic system, in a liberal system, the working class has been given the liberty to negotiate the terms of employment. There are so many things, leaves, protection against undue harassment or retrenchment, so many things, so they must fight with the employers. But here again there is the problem that if it is so easy for a welfare state, and actually it has been done in modern advanced welfare state in the Western countries, and to some extent also copying the West. We have in India also we have done it. So many labor welfare legislations giving right of the working class to go on strike. But at the same time, the employers also want the liberty. They argue that we are also free individuals doing our business. So we must have the right to lock out, to close the gates of the factory. if we find that the laboring class or working class has become unruly and they are disturbing production system. So there is no end to it mechanically, there is no mechanical solution. It must be generally a political atmosphere to be built up based on a common or consensus, common agreement or consensus, which main object should be to establish peace and prosperity in the society. There cannot be any blind answer that he is wrong and he is wrong. Worker is always right, employer is wrong, or vice versa. Employer is right or the workers are wrong. So this dilemma is always there in a particularly welfare society, isn't it?
Sir, as long as there are conflicting interests, is it possible to build this society of harmony and peace where these interests, conflicting interests can be resolved?
Well, I get your question. It is not possible if you say bluntly. It is not possible. But this is the task of political theory, this is the task of law, jurisprudence, to try to devise some sort of a mechanism through democratic process, means through discussion and negotiations and mutual adjustment. This is a challenge that has to be confronted in a democratic system. Okay?
Yes.
If we say blindly that it is possible, no, it is not always possible, but it has to be possible.
Some solution has to be superimposed.
Must be.
So there is a relation between political liberty and economic liberty here, sir?
Yes. Because politics and economics are always interdependent.
Yes.
If economy goes down, large case of unemployment, that becomes a political problem. So liberty, ultimately Barker concludes that liberty this way is an elaborate discussion he did, and they said that after all we find that liberty is a complex concept. It is not that your question shows. It is not that simple statement that this is liberty or that. It is a complex, I underline the word complex, concept, which at once unites the people and divides the people. If you give a wrong emphasis on somewhere, it will disturb and it will divide. It is the task of political theory or political philosophy to conciliate the conflicting claims of different forms of liberty. And for that matter, different claims of the principles of equality and fraternity. And Barker therefore comes to the conclusion that justice is the synthesis, principle of justice with capital J. That is the synthesis and the balance holding together all the three principles of liberty, equality and fraternity, and holding them all in an equilibrium. Now please make a note of this, that we will come to this point again when in the next class we take up the concept of justice or principle of justice. But this is, I just referred that Barker finally points out it is the principle of justice whose task it is to reconcile, to conciliate, to bridge bridges, to establish harmony between three competing principles: liberty, equality, fraternity. Now this is one kind that is at a stage we arrive now. Now I will refer to the latest. I call it the expanding horizon of liberty discourse. That is all these since the days of the Greek civilization right up to the mid 20th century. We have discussed more or less problems. Now in the second half of the 20th century, what is the development? What is the horizon of the discourse? Here I think the most important thinker who must be understood is Isaiah Berlin. Basically, he was a victim of Nazi oppression. We must remember that at the background in our mind. He fled his own country, came to England, where he was offered the professorship in the University of Oxford, and for the rest of his life he lived there. So Isaiah Berlin, in his inaugural lecture, there is a system in Oxford that when a professor is appointed, his first lecture is called That is not a class as such, but a general meeting. He explains some of the basic favorite theme of his profession. That is what the professor. Now nowadays professor has no meaning. Everybody is a professor. But professor basically means any learned man who has something special of its own to contribute. So I say so many things in order to, it will be clear right now when I go into explaining his principles, that his inaugural lecture was titled Two Concepts of Liberty. And this one lecture made Isaiah Berlin a great contributor and an important name in the history of evolution of the liberty discourse. The two concepts, what he means, one is positive concept, another is negative concept. Negative liberty and positive liberty. By negative liberty, he means non-interference, that government will not interfere, parliament will not interfere, that is state will not interfere, so that individual can be free. It is negative. That is absence of external constraints on the individual. It gives the individual to be at liberty as she or he wishes. This is called basic preliminary interpretation of negative liberty. And by positive liberty, he means that it is a concept of liberty which is linked to the achievement of identifiable goal or benefit. Usually personal development, you mark the words, usually personal development, self-realization or self-mastery. Do you get any sense?
Yes, sir.
That is how the individual herself will devise her own method of advancement without injuring his progress on the path of enjoyment of liberty. Now, in Berlin's analysis, liberty is linked to the values of individuality and pluralist political system. I again refer to his life history because he has experienced regimented and brutal political system. Coming to England in the mid-20th century, he finds and he appreciates that it is a pluralist political system in which there is no single master idea. And there are many conceptions of what is good life. There cannot be any one said that this is good and this must be accepted by all. That means automatically it autocratical. But if the entire political system is such that any individual, any group of individual person, associations, etc., they can advocate that this is our idea of good life. This is the good, what we think. Okay, let there be competition among ideas. This is basically a very liberal thing to do, and Berlin values human capacity to carve out a plurality of divergent natures as the supreme value. Berlin says, let the individual decide, let the group decide what is good for it, and let it bargain, let it compete, let it argue, let it debate, and come to know what is liberty. This is what is called value pluralism of Isaiah Berlin. That is what is good. This very concept is a value, matter of value considerations, and these value considerations must be plural. Even when a country is democratic technically or legally, that is there is equality, there is elections, etc., that country, according to Berlin, is not a democratic society if the question of choice is blocked. Just by reference, I can say that USSR constitution, it pretended to be the most democratic constitution, and they propagated it that ours is the most democratic constitution in the world, so that we ensure this and this and this and this. But the whole thing collapsed because there was no alternative choice given to the people of the Soviet Union. No alternative choice. Whatever party decides is good for the people. You have to accept it that party always was good for the people. point is, it is not the question of right is wrong or wrong. You leave the individual to decide for herself or himself what is good for him. So this is the basic difference. So Berlin argues that there are two traditions of thinking about liberty in political thought. One tradition associated with the rise of liberalism as such, and that is negative liberty. From the very beginning, from the Renaissance time, the time when liberalism and capitalism came as twin brothers, they said that don't interfere, right of the individual to make one's progress at the way he thinks best for himself or herself. But this is, he says, the negative liberty. And Berlin argues that this is better than positive liberty. Apparently, at the first instance, it might sound, what is this, that he says positive is not acceptable, negative is acceptable. Because positive, let us go back, I have just said, positive liberty, that the individual will achieve identifiable goal and benefit for personal development, personal self-realization and self-mastery. Well, these are the phrases or the concept which is basically of a higher level of philosophical realization, which does not matter much in day-to-day administration or politics of the country. Now, there is a danger in it, Berlin also argues. Hegel, for example, he talked about that what is good for the society is based known in evolution of the idea, capital I, or the reason, capital R. These are all metaphysical concepts. So these are to be resisted, because that will promote the right of the state to dictate that this is good. There lies the danger. For Berlin, negative freedom implies freedom from interference with one's right to choose and absence of restraint. Negative liberty is the choice among options. He condemns the way positive liberty has been misused by totalitarian regimes, fascist despots. Positive liberty is not attractive to Berlin as it is based on a rationalist and monistic view of the goods. So he said, this is what I say, value pluralism. Society must be pluralist both in structure, operations and spirit. Otherwise liberty will not be there. So Berlin feels more happy in company with Locke, Hume and John Stuart Mill rather than in company with Fichte, Hegel and Marx. So I think my meaning is clear. Now rapidly let us refer to the latest, Joseph Raj. He criticizes the negative liberty of non-interference on the ground because his liberalism is called or known as perfectionist liberalism, and he believes that human autonomy requires a certain kind of community life which has created liberal government promoting value pluralism. Then we can refer to John Gray, very latest in 1990s. He dismisses negative liberty. They are all critics of Berlin. Negative liberty as lacking in intrinsic value. He said that what is an intrinsic value? They have questioned it. He argues that there are collective goods with an inherent value different from public goods. And then finally, we must refer, because we cannot do without him, John Rawls, A Theory of Justice. He is the basic fundamental philosopher of our time, liberal philosophy. Now he says that liberty and equality both are necessary. But to quote one phrase of Rawls, he says that liberty must always have lexical priority. Lexical means dictionary. As A always comes before B. Similarly, he says that if there is any clash anywhere in any policy between equality and liberty, then liberty must have priority.
Over polity.
Yes. But this is the important thing of Rawls' philosophy. He agrees to make discrimination, deviate from the rule, deviate from equality. That means special consideration for special marginal sections of society only when it could be proved that doing that we maximize the liberty of the totality. That is, liberty is prior to equality. And that is what Rawls means justice, that is final accommodating principles whereby society and individuals will be happy. So I think from this discussion one conclusion we can arrive at, and that is that different views on liberty and the intense debate about nature of liberty establish one single point, and that is liberty is indispensable ingredient of any viable political theory.